My sister was set to marry a guy who was a complete douchebag. He seemed like a nice catch to any outsider. He was tall, handsome, very confident, a doctor. Basically the sort of guy any woman would swoon over. Unfortunately, he was a sociopathic, unrepentant narcissist, devoid of any empathy, who would take out his anger on anybody he felt beneath him and seemed to enjoy doing it. You know how basically they say, don't look at how your partner treats you, look at how he treats others. And that's how he'll eventually treat you. My sister didn't pick up on that. I picked up on it early. This guy was really mean. Would berate and insult people for the smallest thing and would lose his cool with anybody who looked at him the wrong way. He started doing it to me, and I told my sister early on, this guy's an asshole. She was like,
Nah.
You two will eventually get along, you just got off on the wrong start. I told him I've seen him do that to other people, but she seemed to think, oh, but he's nice to me, I'm the special one. Maybe I can change him. Or I have no idea what she was thinking. After about 2 years together, when they were engaged, the cracks were evident. My parents loved him. His dad and my dad go way back. They both went to the same medical school together and have been close friends for decades. Her fiancé is also good friends with my 2 older brothers. After 2 years, my sister was realizing this guy was an asshole. He's always been an asshole, and he won't change. There was a really painfully obvious example one day when we were having dinner, and my sister's fiancé and my dad were having a discussion about something political. My sister tried to offer her opinion into the discussion, and they both snickered. Then this guy just started berating her and ripping into her in front of everyone, making her feel this small. I could sense her pain. She was just quiet and just sat there taking it. I was thinking, what are you doing with this guy? He has no respect for you. He has no love for you. Another time our family was at this dinner function where a lot of big people were around. My sister's fiancé completely left my sister alone at the table with me, and was sitting at this other table with 2 women, very obviously flirting with them semi-drunk. He just left her all alone at the table. I asked her what was wrong, why was he ignoring her? She told me they had had an argument earlier and this was his way of punishing her. You see what I mean when I say this guy is a complete sociopath? My sister and I are really close, and even though I'm younger by far, little brothers aren't devoid of wisdom. And I've been urging her from day one to break up with this guy before she gets in too deep. Well, now that she'd spent 2 years with him and was engaged, she was obviously in too deep. And she used to tell me about all the outbursts he has, how he treats her with no respect. We often had long discussions, just me and her, where she'd spill open like a can of beans and just divulge all the bullshit that he's put her through recently. Sometimes she'd cry and I'd be there to help her out, but she still seemed to want to stick with him. She actually convinced herself that he loved her behind all that horrible treatment, and couldn't pull herself to cancel the engagement, what with our parents, his parents, everyone counting on it. She knew they'd all say she's crazy, turning down this smart, handsome doctor. I kept urging her to break up, but she stuck with the he'll change or he loves me deep down excuses. It all came to a heads when one day she very publicly exploded at him. We were having a huge dinner, both sides of our families, and I was sitting next to him. He kept bullying me the entire night. Move your elbows over, couldn't you wear something a bit more presentable? Stop sticking your hand out like that, it's rude, don't you think you've had enough of that? If I asked him to pass a bowl or the sauce or something, he'd hand it over but then pull away and be like, say please, say thank you. He was smiling the entire time, laughing. My 2 older brothers were also snickering. They didn't seem to mind this guy was publicly bullying me and having fun with it. He and my dad started having one of their conversations again, and my dad started airing out all his general frustrations and disappointments regarding me. And they started both talking about my life openly in front of me. Her fiancé then turned to me and started openly lecturing me, and when I tried to ignore him, hey, are you listening to me? What's the matter with you? Your dad never taught you any respect? My sister just then basically exploded. She was sitting at the other side of the table, guessing she didn't want to be near him, but she was watching what was going on the entire time. My sister just then basically exploded. She was sitting at the other side of the table, guessing she didn't want to be near him, but she was watching what was going on the entire time. I am a 28 years old female. And I do babysitting on the weekends to make extra cash. There is one family I definitely should have phased out by now, but the kids are cute, and if I don't have another job, it's easy money. My issue is, the mom is never home on time. She used to not give me return times, but finally I started asking as it made it impossible to get anything done on the weekends. I'd go babysit so she could go to brunch, but she'd be gone from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. My whole day was gone. After that, she'd start giving me times but never stick to them. She wouldn't even call to tell me, she'd just stay out. On Saturday, I got to her house at 6 and she was supposed to be home by 9. I told her she needed to be on time because I had plans to go out with friends. I was even getting ready at their house after I put the kids to bed. She promised. Of course, 9 o'clock rolls around and she's not home. I call her, no response. Text, no response. Another hour. Nothing. Still calling and texting. Finally, it is midnight. By this point, my plans are long ruined, but I'm pissed and exhausted. I call her and leave a voicemail saying if she's not home in the next hour, I'm considering the kids abandoned and calling the cops. I also text her this. I try calling her 30 minutes later and it goes to voicemail on the second ring. I text her again and she leaves me on read. If she had reached out saying, hey, I'm staying out until X time, I would have stayed. I don't know any of her family nor the father of the kids, so I can't call them. I gave her a grace period of 15 minutes and tried calling again, finally called the cops, non-emergency line. They showed up and I showed our agreement and text from earlier in the week confirming that she'd be home by 9. They tried contacting her, didn't answer. I was dismissed and they took the children to the police station. I go home and go to bed. I am awoken at 3 a.m. by a frantic call. It's her. Where are the kids? Why am I not here? I tell her I followed through on my threat, check the police station. She cursed me out, I hung up and went to bed. The next day, she sends me an essay saying the kid's father was called and there's a DCF investigation launched against her. She called me every name under the sun, but I didn't think I was wrong until I spoke to a friend with kids. She said I should have just waited it out and refused to ever sit for her again. She asked if her potentially losing her kids was worth me being petty. I, 29F, dated a guy Joe, 30M, for 3 months before he left me to go back to his ex Kim, 30F. Right after we broke up I found out I was pregnant and now I'm at 24 weeks. I let him know and he was ecstatic. Turns out his girlfriend had fertility issues and would likely never be able to get pregnant naturally, and he has always wanted to be a father. Getting back together was out of the question for both of us, so he's still with his girlfriend. Joe was only allowed at the initial appointment because of COVID-19 and we found out I was having twins. According to Joe, when he told Kim she had a mental breakdown about her infertility and wanted to talk to me. I met them at their house and Kim stated that she wanted to be involved in my pregnancy because she would eventually be the children's stepmother. She started telling me that I needed to do a home birth, that I needed to formula feed so that they could have the babies half of the week, that she wanted one boy and one girl, and that she wanted the kid to call her mama since they would be calling me mommy. I shut her down and said I would make the best choices for my children and my body and left. Kim continued to be overbearing and texting me every day about my eating habits, exercise habits, and ING about how her job wouldn't let her take maternity leave. At the virtual genetics counseling appointment, she attended instead of Joe and took over the whole meeting trying to talk about her family history, which wasn't relevant. When it came time for my 20-week level 2 scan, they allowed me one guest and Joe suggested I take Kim instead of him, which I refused to do. Joe did end up coming and he found out the gender because I wanted to keep it a surprise for me so we could throw a gender reveal party. I put a pregnancy announcement on my social media and then she put up an announcement saying they were expecting twins, the non-traditional way, and how blessed she was. I was irritated but I kept my mouth shut. Then she threw a gender reveal party and posted it on social media. I wasn't even invited. She also announced that she's having a baby shower. I commented on her posts and told her to stop treating me like a surrogate, that the kids weren't hers, and that Joe didn't have any claim or custody of the kids until they are born. I then called Joe and reiterated all of this and stated that I would not be seeing either of them until we went to family court, and that my mother would be my birthing partner. He and Kim and some of her friends and family are saying I'm an asshole, and her mother even called and insisted I give her one of my babies. Like, this is the parent trap? I'm definitely getting a lawyer ASAP. Y'all have scared the shit out of me, but I'm happy you did. We used condoms because I do not react well to hormonal birth control, and I had to wait to get a non-hormonal IUD because of other medical issues. The Thursday I posted this, I went to the police and they stated that there was nothing they could do because a crime hadn't been committed. In my state, orders of protection are criminal or family, so I was able to get one against Joe. On Friday, I did get a lawyer and they let me know in my state there was nothing I could do as far as custody before the babies are born. So I will be leaving my state soon to ensure that this isn't my baby's home state and I can't be charged with anything. Kim came to my job, damaged my car, and broke a bunch of office windows. I work with kids, so she was arrested for not just the criminal damage and trespassing but also child endangerment, so hopefully that works in my favor. Also, if Joe did it on purpose, I don't think Kim knew, because she was screaming at me about how I stole her life and everything I had was supposed to be hers. I have orders of protection against both Kim and Joe. I left the state anyway, and Joe and Kim started harassing me again because there's no legal jurisdiction when you leave the state. But I have enough evidence that I was able to press charges in my current state as well, and will be pursuing a restraining order here. Recently, my cousin and cousin-in-law have been thinking about relocating to our state because of recent job opportunities, and we've hosted them in the past when they visited. The first time they stayed with us, before my son was born. My nephew seemed to develop a strong attachment to my wife and always wanted to be near her. He drew a picture of a heart and picked some flowers from our yard and gave them to her before they left, saying he loved her. My wife thought this was sweet and gently handled his crush by telling him she would always love him as his aunt. But she was sure he would find another girl to fill his heart soon. He told her no, she was his girlfriend. This weekend, they were staying with us again, and my nephew again wanted to be near my wife every chance he got. His mom and dad noticed and told him that because my wife now had to care for our son, she couldn't pay attention to him as much as before. He got upset, telling us that she was his girlfriend, and had a meltdown, which caused my son to start crying. When my wife got up to take our son to another room to calm him down, my nephew got up to follow, and his dad had to forcibly restrain him from following them. I stood up to block the hallway into the separate room just in case he got away from his dad. Once they calmed him down, they apologized for his behavior and said they would keep better tabs on him. Here's the part where I may be the asshole. I told my cousins I didn't feel comfortable with my nephew being so possessive of my wife, and I know for sure she didn't. Especially since he seemed to be so jealous of our son. I told them I couldn't allow their son in our home until he learned to control himself and understand that my wife was not his girlfriend. I apologized but asked them to get a hotel room for the rest of their stay and not to visit us again unless they left my nephew behind with people they could trust and knew would care for him, while they searched for jobs in our state. They didn't say anything but looked saddened and went to the guest room with their son to pack up their bags. I guess they must have told my extended family what happened, because my paternal grandmother called me this afternoon, telling me that I should have been more understanding and that I was wrong to ask them to leave. Am I the asshole? Technically, my cousin is my second cousin. My dad is an only child, so the cousin I refer to in my post is the son of my own dad's first cousin. My paternal grandmother and his paternal grandfather were siblings. I'm not sure if this is correct, but his autistic son would technically be my third cousin. The reason I refer to him as my nephew is because he's the generation after mine in our family tree, and it's less of a mouthful to refer to him as cousin X removed. A lot of people have posted that it's not correct to refer to him as my nephew, but to be frank, I don't care. And my family's never followed this traditional genealogy nomenclature. Without being specific, in the western state I was born and grew up in, it's not uncommon to refer to even close, unrelated adults as uncles or aunts. I call him my nephew because my cousin and I were close, and I still hope to have a close relationship with him if at all possible. Though I don't know how after this situation. Some have asked if I was jealous of my nephew calling my wife his GF. The first time, I thought it was amusing and was surprised that he had any romantic notions towards anyone, let alone my wife. Remember? In my mind he's my nephew and I never thought of him as anything other than a large kid because of his developmental delays and normal, for him, childlike behavior. Regarding the situation that happened this weekend, I was only concerned for my wife and son's safety. I didn't know how he would react and followed my cousin's lead, but wasn't about to let him get near my wife and son once they left the room. I don't know what was said to my paternal grandmother, but I don't want to react in anger and want to talk to my cousin once we've both had time to process what happened and calmed down.